Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back. Dr. Paden, nice to have you here. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Andrew, for the opportunity to be with you and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. So everybody, today's guest is Dr. Matt Paden. He's the president and the managing partner of Great Days Leadership. Matt has spent over 20 years working with executives, educators, and nonprofit leaders to help build stronger teams and healthy organizations, just like we do here at MAP. He holds a doctorate in organizational leadership from Pepperdine and is the co-author of The Core, 8 Principles for Building Strong, Authentic Leadership, which releases this month, April 2026. Dr. Paden work focuses on something a lot of leaders overlook, character, how character, clarity, and internal discipline really drive long-term performance. So we have a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Dr. Paden, thank you for being here.
Well, like I said, appreciate the opportunity. Looking forward to talking about the book. Love talking about leadership. This book is it's something that has been inside me and my co-author for a long time. We were able to get it out there in the world here in just a few weeks. April 21st, it is live and it's available for pre-order now. But it's been a work of it's been a great work, and it's been a great opportunity to work with a co-author who's a mentor of mine, and it's just been a lot of fun to try to help people see that leadership is not about what you do, it's who you are. And it starts from the inside out, and that's what we talk about in the core, and I'm sure we'll get into here some of that over the next few minutes.
Yeah, so how did it come to fruition? The book, the concept, or bringing this thing to life? Was there a backstory of how you decided to write this book?
Well, there really is, and I'll give you the short version. So my co-author, Dr. Ken Jones, was the college president where I went to college as an undergrad in Texas, and small Christian college, and the president in that kind of environment. You have opportunities to get to know them. You have opportunities to be around them. And he's just, from the very beginning of those days, just been somebody who spoke into my life, encouraged me to think about leadership, taught me a lot of lessons. He was the one who encouraged me to go and get a graduate degree in leadership. And so for years, a lot of his teachings have echoed in my mind and become things that I've taught and spoken on and shared. And so about almost 2 years ago, I guess, I was in the middle of thinking through what was next for me as I had a great job at a great university doing a lot of wonderful things, but I just felt like there was something more that I needed to be doing. And so I called him and I said, I need somebody to talk through about this and this potential job change and starting a new company and all that. So long story short, we talked, and he said, if you're going to do that, you need a book. And I said, I know, I've got all these outlines of all these books that will never get read if I stay in an executive role here at this university, just too many things that pull at your time and your attention. And so he said, well, I've got part of a manuscript. Why don't we do one together? And I'll send it to you. He said, it's been sitting in a drawer for 10 years, and he's now the president of another Christian university in Oklahoma. And he said, I won't ever get to it. And I said, well, let me see what you've done. And he sent me about 12,000 words. And after I left the institution and started Great Days, I had about 3 or 4 days off in a tiny cabin out in the woods. And I came back from the mountain there with about half of a book, and then went back a few months later and wrote the other half. And here we are a year or so later. Together we have put together this book, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of the principles he taught me, plus some of the ones that I've been teaching, that we just believe are core and central to leading effectively and making a difference in the lives of those that you lead. And so it's been quite a process. It's been a lot of fun to tell people about it, and we're eager to see the world get its hands on this book over the next few weeks.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And, there's no shortage of books about business and leadership and all those. What's different about the core? Maybe just talk us through that.
Yeah, there's so many good books and there's so many resources out there. And he and I are students of leadership first, and we think that leaders are lifelong learners. And so we've read about all of those books, it seems like, or listened to the podcasts or watched the speeches and done all the things. But I think this one's a little different because it does take us back to some central principles that are a little bit different. It's the first half of the book is a fable, and that allows for some real life application to be seen. It's a story between a mentor and a mentee. It's not our story. People have asked me that. It's not our story necessarily. There's some elements in there that, of course, I drew from, but it is. It's part fable, and then the second part is field guide. And that's where we get into those 8 principles a little bit deeper and more of a traditional leadership book kind of way. And so, between the two different parts that connect, we think it's a little bit unique. The way we frame the principles and then where we draw the principles from. We do have a faith piece to all this. It's not a preachy book at all, but it does draw from some examples found in the Bible, and that we interweave into both the story and the field guide part. So we think it's a unique packaging of both principles and narrative that allows for people to understand it and apply it and find it really practical and applicable. And it's an easy read. My son, I gave him a copy a couple weeks ago when we got the first hard copies in our hands just a couple weeks ago, and he's 13. And I went to check on him, see if he had gone to bed that night, and he said, "Dad, I'm on page 75." And so it's not designed to be academic in terms of its content, even though we're both academics. It's designed to be very accessible to everyone. We think leadership is for everyone, and so it's not written for just the CEOs. It's not written for just the high potentials. It's written for everybody who has the opportunity to influence anyone else. And so we think it's just a little bit different.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, look, I mean, as you're saying that, I was reminded it's not always just about the content, it's the presentation of it. It's like people
Mhm.
learn through stories, so having those stories in there is super important. So, um, being able to keep somebody's attention is hard, especially now, you know? I
Oh
I
yeah,
will admit, I've got a lot of books on my shelf behind me that I've, like, started and never finished, and will probably never finish because they're just, like, kinda boring, Never
yeah,
couldn't really capture my attention. So,
yeah.
that must be hard as an author. It's like, how do you hook them?
Well, I wrote the second half first, and when I
Okay.
went to visit with Dr. Jones, I went to Oklahoma. We sat over breakfast, and I said, "All right, what'd you think?" And in my head, I'm like, "This needs a story." Well, he's a PhD in engineering, and so he's very practical, analytical, and I knew that, but I didn't say we need a story. I waited for him to respond, and the first thing he said was, "It needs a story," and I was like, "Whew, okay, here we go," because I did think about the fact that many people don't finish books, and I know a
Mm,
lot of people who buy books, and a lot of people who start books, and I know some people who finish books, and I thought if we write the first half as a story and somebody isn't hooked, they may give us the first half. They may want to see where the story ends.
mhm.
And even if they do, they'll catch the 8 principles. But for those that want to keep going, the second half is a lot more instructive in terms of how do we do this and how do we live these principles out. And we wanted people to get to both halves, but we thought, okay, for those that buy it and get into the story, they'll at least finish the story. They'll at least get the principles,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And we hope people read the whole thing and enjoy it, and people who've read early copies of it or early versions of it have, and so we're grateful for their positivity, but they have all liked the fact that it starts with a story.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, you guys thought it through. That sounds smart. So, you're at Great Days. You started Great Days. You were in higher education before. What's the story? How did you make that leap? Now you're an entrepreneur, right? So you used to teach about leadership and learn about leadership, be a
Yeah,
student. Now you're on the other side of the aisle. How'd that come to be, and what's that transition been like?
it's been wonderful. For years on the side, I had consulted and coached, and of course, spoken to audiences about the topic of leadership, particularly as it relates to leading change, leading people from where they are to where they need to be inside an organization, organizational change, or leading a team. And so I had done a lot of coaching, speaking, and training. And then I had been a faculty member in MBA programs for years, and which allowed me to scratch the itch of teaching, but also connect with um, early to mid career and executive level business leaders. And so they would also reach back and say, "Hey, we had that class. I'm still struggling with how to do this in my day to day." And so I'd, meet them for coffee or, go to lunch or whatever it may be as I had time to help. And I just loved helping business leaders focus in on how do we make a difference? How do we be all that we can be? And so many times it's not the widgets they sell, it's not the
Mhm,
programs or the products, it's the people stuff.
mhm.
And so the more I was being pulled into those moments, the more I loved those moments. And it just became this thing is like, I think I want to go do this full time and start something. And then just a lot of doors were opened up over the course of a few months. And I was able to jump in with a couple of business partners to start Great Days. And immediately we jumped into serving a variety of clients. And I got to go out and not just be Dr. Paden, the professor, but Matt, the consultant, who can walk you through your people challenges, not HR related necessarily, but training, succession planning. How do you know if you're ready for change or not? Right. And we can take not an academic approach, but a real world approach, but have some of that underlying theory underneath it that I can bring in as somebody who's studied this at the deepest and highest levels. Um, and I get to go do that. And we've done that with Fortune 100 companies, and we've done that with small mom and pops. We've done it with nonprofits, but we love the small to mid-sized businesses as a focus point because they're large enough to where they have complexity, but they're
Mhm.
small enough to where they understand that we don't have all the people in place that we need. We are going to have to grow our own. We need to help people move from being on the team to leading the team. And how do we do that? And so I love that. The teacher in me, the speaker in me, the trainer in me loves that part. I've also loved building this company into from zero to 60. We've gone pretty fast over the last year and a half, but it's been a wild ride, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's really cool. You touched a couple times on something that we talk about a lot, which is companies tend to I think they think it's the right thing to promote from within. So I've got, hypothetically, this awesome salesperson. He's crushing it. I want to reward him. Hey, you're going to lead this team. Now you're the manager. This person has no clue how to be a manager or be a leader. And oftentimes they're not very good at it. Or sometimes it happens, right? They're not very good at it. And that can kill or significantly hurt the performance of the company, the performance of the team, the culture, the morale. People leave. Like there's all sorts of like risks, but it happens all the time. Why do you think that is? Like, why do people, why do we tend to do that so much without thinking of, hey, if I'm going to promote this person, I need to give them the tools to succeed in this job and give them the training and guidance to be this new role, this new person. Do you see that? Do you see that a lot with the clients you work with? Would love to
Every
hear that.
day,
Yeah.
every day. And part of that challenge is they're two different jobs. Think about I'm a sports
Totally.
guy. Think about the star athlete that becomes the coach, and they don't even make it a full season. I was a basketball player, but baseball was probably my first love. You think about the stories related to like Ted Williams, the great Boston Red Sox hitter. Um, you know, Maybe the greatest hitter of all time, depending on who you talk to. But when he became a manager, right, he used to stand behind the cage, as I've been told stories, and he'd be so frustrated at his hitters because he'd be like, "If the ball is spinning like this, you got to adjust your swing like this." And they look at him like, "You can see it spinning." Like, I mean, it's two different skill sets, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Moving from your example, being the sales star to the sales manager, it's two different jobs, two different things, it's two different skill sets. And so we work a lot with those who make the jump. We call it the jump. And we have a whole program called Level Up where we put people through this and say, okay, you have now been promoted. You were on the team and now you lead the team. So it's not even just that you were the salesperson and you were an individual contributor and you did really well. Now we promoted you. It's like Now you've got to make sure all these people, many of whom may be your friends
Hmm.
that you used to hang out with, that you used to sit in the break room or at lunch and talk about the boss together. Now you're the boss,
Hmm.
right? And you have to hold them accountable, and you have to help them see a path forward. You have to, I mean, it's just all these different components. You have to figure out how to set boundaries. You have to figure out all these things. And companies love to promote from within. It's cheaper, right? It takes less time. But what we don't do is many don't do proactively prepare their people for that jump.
Yeah.
They hand them the keys to the new office and say, let me know if you need help. We got our person.
Hmm.
And they mean well. We're here to support you, or here's this book, or here's this. But there's a more holistic approach to how that happens. And I think it's one of the biggest gaps that people have in companies. Um, it is important, I think, to grow your own in today's economy. I think there's a lot of value in that. Sometimes you need outside perspective, but in many cases, the idea of growing your own doesn't start when they get the promotion, right? It's got to start with an intentionality. And so we try to go in on both sides of that in our work. We try to help people understand that let's get these people ready for when the day comes. And then if on the other side, if people have been promoted and they're new managers, we try to go in and try to just jump in where they're at and just really help them at the individual level. We don't do a lot of cookie cutter stuff, but there's some fundamentals that we teach that you've got to get, you've got to put them in your toolkit as early as possible in order to be successful. So you don't flame out, so you don't burn out, so you don't uh, fail in that
Hmm.
new role, right? And so,
Which if you are that person who was excelling in their role, right? And you do get promoted and you don't have the tools, that can be incredibly painful and demoralizing, right? You're like, man, I was doing so well over here. Now this is so hard, but it's just because you weren't given the proper training. It's like, you know how to ride a bike. Somebody gives you the keys to the Corvette and you're like, dude, I've never driven this thing before.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what to do.
that's right.
Crash it on the side of the road. Um, so I would love to, do you have an example of a recent client you've worked with where, and no names, of course, but just like something that comes to mind where you went in there and maybe they thought it was like a strategic problem or an execution problem, but it turned out to be you went in there and you identified that it was something else that they couldn't even see because they don't have the experience that you have.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick story. A few months ago, I got an email on a Sunday night, and I don't usually check my email on Sunday night, but this one struck me. So I read it. Wasn't very long. It said, "Hey Matt, I hear that you and your new company can help me grow our business. I'd love to talk. Here's my number. Reach out when you get a chance." That was on a Sunday. On Monday, I called the person, and I didn't know them well. I'd met them, but I didn't know them well. So I was glad that they reached out. It meant somebody had told them, right? So I call him. I say, "Hey, what's going on? I appreciate the email. Tell me about what's going on." He said, "Well, we've got an opportunity to do some really good things. We've had a good business for a while now, but I think we've got some room to grow, and I'd love to strategize with you about how we move from where we are to where we want to be." I said, "That's awesome." So that's Monday. We set a meeting for Wednesday afternoon. So we go on to the day. The next morning, Tuesday, I am speaking to a group, and I come out of the speech, and I've got all these missed calls from this person who, like I said, I don't know well, and we hadn't really talked about his company a whole lot. We were meeting on Wednesday. This is Tuesday, and I could tell he's not frantic. Don't hear that, but he's concerned. And he leaves me a voice message, and I'm getting into the car to ride to the next thing, and I listen, and this is what his message says. He says, "Matt, I know we're supposed to talk tomorrow, but some things happened this morning, and I think I'm just going to sell the company." I said, "Okay, that's a little different than what we were talking about 24 hours ago." So I just call him. I'm driving somewhere to the next appointment or the next client meeting, whatever it may be, and I call him. I said, "Hey, I got your message. I'm a little concerned. I don't know what's going on, but love to fill me in." He said, "It's awful." I said, "What happened?" And he said, he didn't refer to her as this, but I found out later this is how he thought of her. He said, "My number two walked in this morning and said she's moving out of state and is going to be leaving, and it's just going to, crush our entire company." I said, "Oh, wow, I'm so sorry to hear that." Like I said, I don't know his company yet.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, tell me, how much time did she give you? 2 weeks, 3 weeks?" He said, "7 months." And I said, "Oh, 7 months." I said, "Why don't we keep our meeting tomorrow and you let's not do anything and let's just talk about that."
Yeah.
And so we met, and we met many times over the next few months, and we worked out a way for her to transition well and even into a hybrid role, which he was not super excited about in the moment that she told him that she was leaving. But and I say all that to say 'cause this guy's brilliant. Let me back up. This guy is way smarter than most people, intelligent, thoughtful, successful. But here's what to your question, they didn't have a strategy problem. You know, it wasn't brain surgery for me to say, well, let's figure out a remote hybrid kind of approach to her role, right? It wasn't a strategy problem. The problem was they had a leader who was caught in the fog, as we say
Mm,
in the book
mhm.
and just in general. They were so consumed with all the pressures and stresses. They were so exhausted. So when I met with him on that Wednesday, we talked through a few things. And finally, at one point, he looked at me, he said, "I'm just so tired." I said, "Tell me more about that." He said, "I'm just so tired. It's like every day there's all these things. All I want to do is, sell my product, do my thing. This other stuff just wears me out." I said, "All right, let's start there." Because what I sensed pretty quickly was this was not a strategy problem. It wasn't a business is going to go down the tubes problem. It was a leadership problem, not because he was incapable, but because he was stuck.
Mhm.
He was stuck in the fog, which happens to all of us at different points along the way. And his fog came because he was stuck, as we say, in this fatigue. And he was just beaten down a little bit, worn down by the idea of having to restructure, having to rethink things because they've gotten in the way of where the strategy was. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think leaders all the time get stuck in the fog, and we try to talk through that both in the book and then our work, just to say, how can we help you cut through the fog to get to the other side to where you don't make decisions like I think I'm just going to sell the company, right? It wasn't that that was the worst decision because he would have made money and he could have gone on with his life, but it wasn't the best decision in terms of long term wealth building, long term business creation, and the fact that he loved his company.
Right. Right.
But in that moment, he's just so stuck because when you're in the fatigue, it leads to this fog that leads to flirtation, as we say, with these bad decisions.
Right. It's an
And
emotional
so
response. Yeah.
exactly. And so I think that a lot of leaders don't have strategy problems. They don't have information problems. They have problems related to um, not just the fog, but maybe it's something that they're just not being able. They just can't see through it to the other side. And that's
Yeah.
where we often come in and try to be helpful, both on the strategy side, but also just like, where are you at as a leader? Because if you're not healthy, if your tanks aren't charged up and full, how can
Mhm.
you lead your people? How can you lead this organization? And we think there's a lot of value in starting with checking in where the leader is, not just where the KPIs are showing and where the strategies and tactics and the strategic plan are pointing us towards. It's like, where are you as a leader right now?
Hi, if you're a CEO out there who's struggling with focus for your company, aligning your team, accountability, if you're struggling with execution, connecting the dots from where you're at to where you want to be, we've got a great program for you here at MAP. My name is Michael Cato. I'm the CEO. Most importantly, I was a client for 15 years, sold my company to a public company, and then bought MAP so that we can help other entrepreneurs with this specific problem. We're a 60-year-old company. We've worked with 170,000 individual executives and CEOs. We've worked with 15,000 organizations. This is what we do. Click the link below to learn a little bit more about how people just like you, CEOs, have transformed their business and ultimately transformed their life by running through the MAP system.
It's really important because your people are watching, right? People are watching
Every day.
you for, how they should be feeling about the company and just they're gonna replicate you. They're gonna mimic you. It's funny, man. It's actually kind of interesting. That's the in 2 days, that's the second time I've heard a company or a leader so burnt out that he was just willing to shut down the company. I was just talking to a client yesterday who said to me, if we weren't making so much money, I would shut this business down today. I was like,
Wow.
wow, okay. Same thing. They were just sort of burnt out. There was a lot of internal turmoil. Wasn't strategy, man. They were growing like a weed. It was just that they were dealing with so much stuff internally and they didn't yet have the tool set to deal with it, that it was causing this pain. It's like, man, that sucks. That's fixable. Let's help you out, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's just like an emotional response and unnecessary.
And that's why we think leaders have to develop from the inside out. It's about who you are. It's not your skills. I talk to people all the time. There are important skills. I mean, leaders need to be able to communicate,
Mhm.
negotiate, deal with conflict, strategy. All those things are really important. Don't hear me minimize them at all. But none of that matters if who you are doesn't show up every day in a way that is healthy and helpful and focused on the important things. Because you have to show up. And in order to do that, that starts from, we say, the core, from the inside out. Just as though you're working out, you've got to do core exercises
Mhm.
because it makes a difference for everything else, right? And that's what leaders often forget because they're really busy. They wear the honor or the badge of honor that says I'm the busiest person here, or they think they have to be the smartest person here. They think they have to have all the tools. And the reality is they need you to be the best version of yourself, not just have the best understanding or knowledge. They need to hear, people need to see you be the best version of yourselves. And they need to understand that you're human and you mess up and you're flawed, but that you're growing
Mm.
and that you're seeking to learn and that you're seeking to move forward. That's what followers need from leaders as much as anything else.
I think that's a very good segue. So I think in part of the book, you talk about ego. And I think what you just mentioned, I absolutely agree with, but also requires humility and self awareness and like, which is important, but not everybody has, especially not entrepreneurs, right? Or CEOs, because sometimes that ego is what allows them to take the leap and do something like, look, the stats don't lie, right? Most businesses fail. Most businesses never grow past $1 million. A very, very tiny percentage get past 10 million. So like to take the leap requires ego and being able to like laugh in the face of that. Yet it can also be a hindrance as you're growing and becoming a leader. So like question is those two conflict. How do you address that? And then for somebody to, so if the ego is the issue, but it requires the self-awareness and humility, how do you cross that
Mhm.
bridge?
So a couple things come to mind, Andrew. It's first thing, everyone has an ego. You do, I do, we all
Mm,
do. We all have an ego. I think the better way to suggest the topic of ego, we think it's a core principle to keep your ego in check, not to just deny who you are or think. C.S. Lewis, the great theologian, said, it's about having a proper view of self. It's not thinking too highly or too lowly of yourself because
mm,
I'm the worst and I'm the best are both about my ego. Like I'm the worst at this. That's about me. I'm the best at this. That's about me too. It's about having a proper view of self. These are my strengths, gifts, talents, and abilities. This is who I am, self-awareness. This is what I value. This is what I hold dear. Those are all really important components of self-awareness. And then the other side of that is this idea that when I show up in a room, when I show up to lead, when I'm in the workspace or at home or in the community, wherever it may be, how do I show up with all my talents, strengths, gifts, and abilities, my values, the things I hold dear, and intersect with others? And the only way to do that is to keep my ego in check, to find ways to throttle up and throttle back to say it's not about me. And so we talk about some additional principles that tie to that with some things as you mentioned. How do you make that really practical? Okay, keep your ego in check. What does that mean? Well, that's where you start. It's not about me, it's about other people. And ways to do that, right? I've got to be coachable. I've got to acknowledge that I don't know everything. I can't. Nobody does. So how do I continue to be coachable? The other thing, another key principle, core principle in our book is lead with your ears. You got to be a listener, right? You've got to be a listener. And if you're going to lead people and try to keep your ego in check, you got to listen. You can't just be talking all the time.
mhm,
I've known CEOs and executives for years and in my current work who, if we get faced with or maybe they're told something about themselves. And what they do, they don't just listen and take it in, absorb it, and try to be coachable because their ego won't allow them to do that. What they do is they turn around and try to start teaching other people. Well, you said that's about me. Well, let me tell you about you. They turn the teaching around, right? And that is a first red flag. One of the first red flags when I go in to meet with people is, uh, how do you receive feedback? And if they say, well, we don't do feedback here, which sounds crazy, but you hear it in organizations like, well, we don't have great feedback loops. Well, why not?
Yeah.
How are you providing that? Who tells you the truth? Well, I don't really have anybody that tells me the truth. These are all things that point me to say it's because you haven't opened the door for somebody to be
That's right.
a truth teller, because
Right.
you don't either demonstrate listening or humility, or you don't want to know. And that also demonstrates a lack of humility or an ego that, as we say, is out of control. Because we say an ego out of control always leads to destruction.
Mm.
And it may not be destruction in terms of your business crumbling. It could be destruction, the wake you leave behind you along the way.
Yeah.
Your business may be making money, but everybody's miserable. You may be making money, but you've lost 50% of your employee base over the last year because they will not work for you. Yes, your widget sells at a rate that allows you to be successful.
Mhm.
And it could also look like an ego, out of control leads to destruction. Could be the executive or the leader who everything's transactional. And then when they need help, or they need something, or when they're done, when they retire, they look around and say, why does nobody call me for lunch anymore? Part of it's because the way you made people feel, which had a lot to do with your ego. So there's a lot of things that interconnect to that, Andrew, and I don't want to ramble on, but I do think of all the core principles, one of the hardest is to keep your ego in check.
I think that is hard. I think um, everybody needs to work on that, including myself. Okay, you guys do a lot of Great Days, does a lot of workshops and leadership development work. After those engagements, if you come back to a client, what do you see that slips? Because it's not just, hey, we learned it, cool, we're done, right? It's the implementation, it's the ongoing reinforcement, it's the execution. So, like, do you see that, man, this tends to stick, but accountability or alignment or communication or something else tends to drop off? Like, what is it that you see happen in the 6 to 12 months after?
Yeah. So our models, our ideal model, an ideal client allows us to not just do the workshop and drop.
Mm.
I think there's a lot of people who bring in really good resources for training. We do some of that where we go in and we give the workshop, and then we don't hear back from people. We call them and they say, how are things? Oh, that was a great workshop. Well, how's it been implemented? What are you
Yeah.
doing with the information? Well, I hadn't thought about that, because it's like a box check. And I don't
Yeah.
want to be critical of people who lead good companies that go in and do training and they do the workshop and drop it off and they run out the door. Ours is a little different. We try to be folks that come in and do the good and excellent training, but then we also think that you have to do things to follow through. So some of our most ideal clients are those that say, we want to do the workshop on this topic, and then we want you to coach our leadership team on this topic and navigate, not just coach and talk and lecture, but work one-on-one or work one-on group
Yeah.
with managers, to say, okay, we learned this topic, we learned these things about you and your team. What does that mean today? And we walk through we walk through work and life and leadership with those folks. And so our model starts with really good information, but really quickly jumps to how can we help you apply it? Because the follow through piece or the application piece is what gets lost. It's why so many people sell online courses, right? I have
Mhm.
no problem with that. But what do you do with it if all you're
Right.
getting is the information? The information is, we do not have a lack of information. You can, especially in the world of AI, you can learn just about anything, on any topic, just like that. But the reality is, what we do have a problem with is wisdom, which is the application of information,
Mhm.
because that has to be intentionally, grown and developed. And so our model is a little different. We would say that having a workshop on XYZ topic is a piece of the puzzle, but um, it's not where the real growth happens. It's where information is shared. Then we got to get to work. And I think
Yep.
that's where people struggle in companies, particularly small to mid-sized companies, because they don't have training departments, right? They have people who
Hmm.
are assigned the task of bring in the topic or bring in the speaker, call Great Days and have them come talk on this. But then we quickly say, we'll do that, especially if you allow us to do this add-on where we get to spend the next year in your company talking about it. And not in an overbearing kind of way, but in a way that says, let us come alongside you and partner. If this topic's worth talking about, let's not just talk about it. Let's grow with this. Let's learn from this. And I think that's the difference that needs to be made, especially in an information rich age where it,
I
information
mean,
is not the problem.
no, we have a fire hose of information. We
Oh,
have
too
too
much.
much,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, absolutely. But most people don't know how to apply it. I've been thinking about that a lot lately because we have consultants with MAP and the workshops and training and implementation, and like how does that change in the age of AI? And my perspective right now is I actually think that companies like ours, and there's similarities between the two. When you have experienced, really strong consultants, I actually don't think that can be replaced by AI because there's something about that in-person learning and it's experiential, right? You can't AI doesn't replace experiences. Whereas, it's not going to replace you go to a baseball game. It's not going to replace where you go to in higher education, maybe I'm sure you have more perspective about this than I do. Like you hear this amazing lecture that you can't replace that with a robot. Maybe in the future, I guess, but I don't see it. I think it's an experience that you can't take away.
Yeah,
Um,
I think in the age of AI, we're doing some really interesting things behind the scenes right now that we're working on some not just products to sell, but they are products to sell, but just the whole idea of like how does your AI strategy match with your people strategy?
mhm,
Or how does it match with your, especially in mission driven organizations, for profit, nonprofit, doesn't matter. People who are like, yeah, we want to do good business, but we also want to make a difference in the world.
yeah.
Right? I mean, because there's legitimately millions of those companies out there that that's their aim and that's their claim. We want to make a difference in the world while we do good business. And I love that. But AI comes along, not just comes along, it's been around, but now that it's just right in front of us every day and there's new tools, you can replace people,
Mhm.
right? I don't want to list the jobs that are the most obvious for anybody who's listening, but the reality is there are jobs that can be replaced, but what you can't replace is how does a computer is not going to help you live out your mission, right? I'm going to pick on an obvious, like a graphic designer in your company is not just a person who draws and creates artwork that goes and sells or connects a story. They also live out your
Mhm.
mission every day by who they connect to, the clients they serve, the internal clients they serve, whatever it may be. And so we're working on how do you match your AI strategy to your people strategy and to your mission? Because it can't just be we're going to save money and use AI and it's just going to replace all these things. We were talking yesterday in a meeting that some of the big consulting firms that um, absolutely cut lots of jobs out thinking AI is going to replace all these people are started reeling that back in because they're like, yeah, we can deliver information, but we can't, the nuances of people, a
Yeah.
computer and AI cannot fully connect to or make operational. And so I think there's a place for it. And I do think it's one of the future challenges that we and you all are going to help navigate. But it's going to be really important to do that well because in the name of saving money, we may go towards AI and all that we may and all that may be well and good. But on the other side, what we may do is shortchange our mission.
Right. That's a good point. That's a good perspective. Well, when you look at the next phase of Great Days, where do you want to take the business? What's the big goal for you guys?
Yeah, I appreciate that question for sure. I mean, we were in a strategy session just yesterday afternoon. We've been blessed with so many opportunities over the last year and a half, but we are trying to figure out, okay, where do we go with this? We've got great clients. serving a lot of different types of organizations. I think a couple of things that we want to become more and more known for. One, I just mentioned, we want to be a leader in how do you connect your AI strategy to your people strategy and to your mission. We want to do a lot more in that space, and I think you'll see us do that here very soon with some really specific tools, scorecards, kind of things that we're going to build out that help us paint a picture differently than just talking about it. So we're going to be doing more of that, and I really think we have some opportunities to do some things for those in the middle. There's a lot of leadership development stuff for people at the C-suite or the
Yep.
executive level, and that's needed, and we still do some of that. But I think we're focusing in on people in the middle, people who are kind of in between. Maybe it is that person who's the new manager, right, on the
Hmm.
team, but it may just be the mid-career person who's navigating both managing up, managing down, managing across. How do we lead from where we are? And leading from the middle is something that we're spending some time with right now. And then obviously we're trying to continue to, especially as the book comes out, really help cement these 8 core principles into people's minds and in their hearts to say, you know what, I want to lead and I want to make a difference. How do I do that? And there's lots of great resources. We think this is a new resource to the mix that will allow people to see a pathway forward to say, okay, if I can think about these 8 things, I can make a difference in my company, in my home, in
Hmm.
my community. And that's what leaders do. They make a difference and they create value for those around them. And you can't do that when your ego's a mess. You can't do that when you're not working for other people, when you're focused on your own agenda. And so we're going to zero in on those things and see if we can't continue to make a difference ourselves and try to help people make a difference in their spheres of influence as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, congratulations on the launch of the book.
Thank you.
I hope it is extremely successful. Before we wrap up, where can folks go to learn more about Great Days or get the book or connect with you?
So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. If you want to learn more about our company, go to greatdaysleadership.com. We've got a lot of stuff there, upcoming events, other ways to connect with us through social media. The core is available for pre-order now and will be available for sale uh, April 21st. And so it is available everywhere books are sold online, every major retailer. And we're just grateful for people picking it up and checking it out and then letting us know what they think. So reach out to us, info@greatdaysleadership.com if you have comments or thoughts. And we'd love to hear from you and connect to your audience as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. And thank you, everybody, for listening. We will see you next time.